Welcome to How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy, the stories behind the people driving results in the nonprofit sector.
What I'm agreeing to do with them is customized to the organization, but the remainder of the contract is pretty much the same thing. And I had it developed by a law firm here in town, and it's a very thoughtful contract with regards to both parties. The variance is in how they're retaining me, whether it's going to be a monthly, a yearly, or a by the hour contract. I really try to steer folks away from the hourly contract, but you have to have a starting point. And there's so much more you can do if they retain you for X number of months that you can do things over the course of that year to thoughtfully lay out their programs.
Today in the podcast is Cathy R. Sheffield. Cathy is a fundraising executive with over 20 years of experience, specializing in major gifts and gift planning. She founded ThinkGiving in June of 2017 and has experience in healthcare and education for organizations such as All Saints Health Foundation, Texas Health Resources Foundation, Cook Children's Health Foundation, Texas Christian University, the University of Texas at Arlington, and the American Diabetes Association. Without further delay, here's my interview with Cathy.
I'm here today with Cathy Sheffield. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here today. I appreciate the offer.
Absolutely. First off, can you introduce yourself and your consultancy?
I'm Cathy Sheffield, and I started ThinkGiving a little over a year ago, which is a planned giving and major gift consulting company located here in Fort Worth, Texas. I have been a planned giving professional for about 20 years with some wonderful organizations, and I really wanted to be able to share what I've learned over the last 20 years or so with organizations that are not strong in planned giving programs.
Gotcha. And when did you first know you wanted to be in fundraising and work with nonprofits?
I started out in a political career, actually. I was a campaign manager for a statewide race in North Dakota. And then after that, I moved to Washington, D.C. and worked for a U.S. Senator from North Dakota. I made the decision to move to Fort Worth, Texas in about 1997. And at that point, knew that I wanted to work either in higher education or healthcare fundraising. And fortunately, I was able to find a position that met that match. I did not want to stay in government relations or political activities. I was ready to get out.
Gotcha. And prior to starting your own business, what organizations did you work with?
I was completely blessed when I moved to Fort Worth, and I worked for organizations like Texas Christian University, the University of Texas at Arlington, Baylor Scott and White Health, and Texas Health Resources. So I spent the majority of my career here in town in healthcare and higher education with some of the best organizations in the state.
And how did your experience with healthcare and higher ed, how are those different as far as was the approach much different between the two verticals?
Yes, higher education is so much easier than healthcare. They have a built-in constituency.
Yeah.
And yes, healthcare, you have a built-in constituency with your past patients or grateful patients and their families. But often you really have to go seek those out. HIPAA laws have gotten a lot easier in that respect, but it's still very difficult to identify where your patients have experienced your mission within the organization. And I'll tell you that healthcare, it's just, there's so much other support that comes just from the generic community. In higher education, you do get to know their age because you typically have information about their age and where they grew up, and just so much helpful when you're raising funds.
Yeah, absolutely. So ThinkGiving, where did you come up with the name for that?
So I decided I wanted to create this organization about 8 years ago in 2010. And so I had started working on the business plan, started working on all these different things, but the name was the one thing that kept lingering in the back of my mind. I kept a running list of names that I wanted to consider for the organization, and never did I want to consider using my name. I see this much bigger than Cathy Sheffield and Associates or whatever. So I had kept this running list, and when it came time to form the organization, in working with the gentleman who helped me with all my design, he took that list from me and he found the phrase ThinkGiving on there. It was actually not one that I was actually readily considering.
Yeah.
When he put it in front of me in the design, I fell in love with it and had to do it. So ThinkGiving was something I came up with. I have no idea why. I always think of planned giving as giving outside the box, that it's more strategic and more thoughtful. I think that ThinkGiving just popped because of the process that one goes through when creating that legacy.
Yeah. And is planned giving your focus?
So planned giving is my focus. However, I do strongly encourage blended gifts. So I incorporate a lot of major giving strategies in what I do with my clients. So it's a planned giving, primarily major gift organizations.
Now, prior to starting ThinkGiving, you mentioned a business plan and coming up with a name and all that. What were the steps to get it actually up and running?
I loved the organizations I was working for. So I was doing all these different things in the background to prepare myself, not only financially, emotionally, to prepare my family for such a departure from the norm. But with starting a company, there are so many things you do have to think about. So legally, with regards to federal and state compliances and things like that. But for me, it was a mental, I'm ready to do this now because I've done what I feel like I can do in our community. For me, it was finding the right time to leave an organization that I love, knowing that it was the right time for me to be able to do so and fulfill this dream.
Yeah. And you've been in business now for a year and a half, is that right?
About that, yeah. And its time has flown. And I can't believe it took off as well as it did. I mean, it really has taken off. And I think that part of that is because before I did this, I spent those 8 years talking about this with friends and with peers in the community. And so I was really, in many ways, doing an assessment of need with nonprofit organizations informally, with them not really knowing that I was planning on doing this.
Yeah.
So is there a need for planned giving services in the community? And so, yes, there was. I found there was a need. And so many of the organizations locally cannot afford a planned giving person or even someone who could do it in conjunction with, major gifts.
Yeah.
Or directing, because what we always find is that anyone who does planned giving with other things tend to push planned giving to the back burner because the organization typically needs the immediate resources that other fundraising activities bring.
Yeah. What organization did you work with prior to starting the business?
I was the foundation director at Baylor Scott and White Health, All Saints, Fort Worth.
Okay. Were you able to retain them as a client? I know some consultants end up actually doing that.
No, I did not. They're a very mature program, and they are a 48 hospital system. They have 4 foundations. And so I really, in all honesty, didn't look to that because my desire for ThinkGiving was to really help those smaller organizations that couldn't afford.
Okay. Yeah. Understood. Yeah. Thinking back a year and a half ago, is there anything you'd change if you were starting it again?
All the bumps in my road so far have been with my contract. You really need to make sure you have the right contract. So the bumps in the road have been editing and modifying or tweaking my contract to better fit my and me. The other thing I would say is indirectly related to that question is I would have started it earlier. I would have figured out a way to start it earlier because I'm in love with what I'm doing.
Yeah. Now, with the contracts, have you gone to a mode where they're pretty similar to all the organizations, or is it highly customized depending on the scope of the work and your goals there?
Now they're pretty standard with regards to what I'm agreeing to do with them. Well, what I'm agreeing to do with them is customized to the organization, but the remainder of the contract is pretty much the same thing. And I had it developed by a law firm here in town, and it's a very thoughtful contract with regards to both parties. The variance is in how they're retaining me, whether it's going to be a monthly, a yearly, or a by the hour contract. I really try to steer folks away from the hourly contract, but you have to have a starting point. And there's so much more you can do when they, particularly in planned giving, where they can, if they retain you for X number of months, that you can do things over the course of that year to thoughtfully lay out their program so that it is something that they can sustain. If I came in there for, X number of hours, only 1 month and started something for them, the odds of them sustaining that are not as good as if I work with a contact or two within the organization and we do something over the course of a year, laying it out and strategically plotting, okay, these are your prospects. This is what we're going to do with regards to marketing. This is how we're going to educate and train your staff. This is how we're going to do this. I feel that that's more sustainable. And my goal is to give them a sustainable program that they are able to manage with little to no assistance from me moving forward.
And something I'm realizing is that prior you worked with much larger institutions like healthcare institutions and higher ed. How has that shift been for you working with these smaller institutions?
So I feel like my experience with those other organizations that were much larger was really good for me in that the organizations had the funds to be able to fully engage in a planned giving program proactively and consistently. They didn't have to worry from year to year to year whether or not we were going to have the budget to sustain the planned giving program. Fortunately, I also had an opportunity to start a planned giving program at an organization that was large. They had not proactively done anything. They had been the grateful recipient of many large bequests and different planned gifts over the years, but had never really dedicated any time and proactively approached the program as a part of their comprehensive fundraising strategy. So that gave me the experience of starting a program from scratch. And I feel like many of the obstacles that I had in that experience relates to what these smaller nonprofits are experiencing in initiating their programs. So I know how to approach the board and defend the worthiness of a formalized program. I know how to speak to leadership and board members about the time commitment that's required to begin a plan giving program. You need an organization that's going to invest several years in a plan giving program. It's not a 1 year and done program. You don't look at 1 year's results and say, oh my gosh, this was so successful. That's the thing that I feel like I'm able to bring to organizations that don't have formalized programs, is the fact that the organizations I worked for had long-term plan giving programs. TCU's plan giving program is 100 plus years old. So to be able to speak to the ROI and the fruit of the labor that can be produced from a mature program to an organization that hasn't yet either developed the mature program or is just now beginning a program.
Gotcha. You mentioned earlier when naming the business that you didn't want your name in it because you hope to expand it. In what ways do you hope to do that?
I'd love to have some ThinkGiving philanthropic advisors that are affiliated with ThinkGiving to be represented across the country. I currently have done work in Nebraska, and I've done some work in other cities across the country. Nothing formal as I did with the two organizations in Nebraska. But my hope is to stretch it across the country and have some plan giving individuals come either with me part-time or full-time and be affiliated across the country.
And something I noticed on your website that was kind of unique to ThinkGiving is that you offer personal guidance, which besides just working with nonprofits, you're working with individuals. How's that been like, and how do you actually come up with that idea of doing that?
There's two parts to this answer. I came up with the idea of doing it just from my work over the years, working with individuals and helping them with their legacy creation. So when you're working with an organization like a TCU or a Texas Health Resources, many times those individuals, when they're doing a planned gift, have other organizations they wish to support. So I realized in there, whatever type of planned gift it is. So I decided early on that what I really wanted to do is help individuals, whether they were a formal part of an organization or not. And I've had that opportunity to do so. And it's so fulfilling to sit down and talk with someone and say, okay, you are not quite ready to start a foundation or formally create a nonprofit yourself. How would you like to see your philanthropy impact our community or wherever it is in the globe? And would you need assistance with reviewing missions of nonprofits or reviewing proposals from nonprofits? And so that's the kind of stuff I've had an opportunity to do here and there. Mm-hmm. And I will be perfectly honest with you, I spend the lion's share of my work not doing that once I started ThinkGiving. I still want to be able to do that. I don't promote it as much as I do the other elements of it. But when I am working with nonprofits, I do talk about it. And then I talk with individuals about it also. And
what services do you find yourself working with nonprofits?
Most of the organizations that I'm working with now have never had a formal program. They have passively received gifts. Mm-hmm. And have never initiated a more formal promotion of bequests or IRA gifts or anything like that. They've never done that.
So you're laying down the foundational work for them.
They come to me, and that's the kind of proposal I prepare. I even had one organization that had been dabbling in it and had erroneously issued a few charitable gift annuities in a couple different states and had never known that they needed to register. So just little things like that. They were being donor-centered and fulfilling their mission by helping individuals make a gift to their organization. And they didn't realize that there are a lot of things that you have to do sometimes on the front end to just get it going.
Yeah. Okay. And with everyone being so brand new into this, what kind of expectations do you set for your clients? And
the first thing I always recommend is that I go in and do a review of their past gifts. So that gives me a much stronger idea of what they have already been passively receiving. And then I try to get an assessment of their donor database. So I ask them to run lists of what their frequency, longevity, donor history looks like. That helps me quite a bit. The majority of the organizations I've been working with, we started Simple Bequest Program. It's a little bit harder to set an expectation for a bequest program.
Mm-hmm.
However, anytime an organization just starts proactively doing that, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that will just self-identify that they've already done it and just have never notified the organization. So I find that gives them that sense of, oh my gosh, this is being successful moving forward. Because plan giving is a little hard to quantify sometimes.
Yeah, it's not immediate returns, right?
Right. So we talk about metrics like, how many conversations do you have about bequests during the year? Do you present them a formal proposal request for that consideration? How many mailings do you do, and do you get responses back? How are you following up with those responses? What kind of success rate do you have after you follow up? Because if you start it and you mail stuff out and then you don't respond, really, you've done nothing. You have to put everything in place so that they're completely prepared along the spectrum of where folks come in. If it's them having a conversation and the person says, yes, I want to do this, what do you have to give them or tell them that will get them able to do that with their advisors? If it's a mailing and they've responded to that, now how do you respond to that? Things like that. So those are the kind of metrics like around those types of activities.
Okay. And finding new clients, what's kind of your approach there?
Because I had the opportunity for about 7.5, 8 years of laying the groundwork of talking with folks, building relationships with nonprofits locally that didn't have formal programs. Basically, it's been word of mouth. So far, it's been word of mouth. Yes, I have a website, but website has not driven the business, and I don't expect it to. And then I do a lot of speaking at conferences. So I am actively pursuing clients for ThinkGiving. And I also work with Thompson and Associates too. But I have one client with Thompson Associates, would love to have more. The majority of my clients are with ThinkGiving. So when I'm out speaking, I'm technically representing both companies. My promotion has been word of mouth and exposure at conferences across the country.
Okay. Yeah. And when you first got started, did you need any financial investments from banks, or was it just personal financing that did it?
My husband and I had been saving up for a few years, and we made initial owner's equity investment into the company. We deposited $25,000 into an account, called it ThinkGiving, started it from there. And the truth of the matter is I probably only needed about half of that to start.
Yeah.
If even. But I did have the business plan, and I did have other resources that I could have gone to a bank to get that initial investment. But yeah, you need to have that business plan done before anybody will consider investing with you.
Right. Yeah.
Fortunately, we had just saved up. We're able to do our own investment.
And the initial investment, was it mainly just to be able to afford life until you got those first checks from those initial clients? Or were there other investments such as like the website and things like that it was required for?
It was the initial injection of resources so I could buy the contract, buy business cards, prepare the website, have somebody help me do the website. Those kinds of things. Fly around for a few conferences where I was representing ThinkGiving, not Baylor Scott and White. Prior to starting ThinkGiving, I would represent Baylor Scott and White. It was that type of investment. My first signed contract for a year came in December, about 7 or 8 months after I started. Prior to that, I was doing small projects. So I was, contracted to do policies and procedures, or I was contracted to come in and speak to a group of retirees, or I was contracted to come in and do, various things. And that was nice. But what I was really laying the groundwork for was the 12-month contract. And what took the time was presenting the opportunity when I first started, and then they had to run it up the chain of command, get board approval. That always takes several months for an organization to be able to get to the point where they make a year-long investment in a consultant.
Yeah. And would there be a situation where you would actually turn down work at this phase in your business?
I've gotten a lot of phone calls for 2 different areas, capital campaigns and special events. And I always defer them to folks that I know in our area that do them. Yes, I could do both of those, but that's not what I want ThinkGiving to be based on.
Yeah.
I have no personal interest in special events. I love to go to them. I appreciate all the detail, but it's really not fun for me to do that. And capital campaigns are so much fun to do. I love capital campaigns. The time that it takes, the infusion of time every month that it would take for somebody to do a capital campaign the right way is not the same model that I have for ThinkGiving. I feel like I would either be deferring from my mission, or I would not be doing them justice with their capital campaign.
Right. You feel overwhelmed your work balance where you could only take on that one client almost, right?
Right. If you're doing capital campaigns, and right now I'm a one-person shop, I could probably do only 2 of those at the most and do them justice. You and I both know when an organization starts into a capital campaign, they typically have at least one, if not more, dedicated staff members to that capital campaign. That's what they typically go to for a consultant, is to help them set all that up. But I'm working with really small organizations, and they definitely need more than just the strategic planning and the vision of me being able to direct somebody else to operate a capital campaign.
Okay, gotcha. The tasks you do on a daily basis, as you grow, do you hope to be able to delegate some of that stuff? What parts of your job don't you actually enjoy?
I love this question because I hate making travel arrangements, QuickBooks. It takes so much time. I travel at least twice a month, at a minimum every month, sometimes more. And while that doesn't sound overwhelming, by the time you do air, hotel, car rental, X, Y, and Z, it does take quite a bit of my time. And so, and QuickBooks, while I love finances and numbers and have had that as part of my career for so long, I just don't enjoy doing the invoices, expenses, reconciling, things like that.
Yeah. Do you find you have to track down your clients to get the invoices paid, or are they pretty good about that so far?
Oh my gosh, they're amazing. I've had no problems with my invoices. They definitely are in position to respond fairly quickly to my invoices, but it's just the time and process of doing it.
Yep. Before we get to the lightning round, last question here is, what's your typical schedule like?
So my schedule, I really have to focus on balancing trips that can be anywhere from 2 days to 3 days to the needs of my clients that I have here. Because each of my clients, I've allotted so many hours a month to them. And many times I go over that, or sometimes I go less than that, but I try to make it an even balance. And you have to figure how to respond to all of their needs in light of the fact that you're out of town at least one full week, if not more, a month. When you are working for yourself, it's a careful balance between all your different responsibilities, being a good time manager. And I will tell you that a difficult thing I had that I think folks need to take into consideration before they go into consulting is, how are you officing? So I have an office here that I love. I'm looking at hummingbirds eating out of my little hummingbird hanger right now. I love my office, but sometimes working from home can be difficult. And that plays into the balance of work also. So I try to get out and do a lot of sitting and working in other locations too.
Okay. What's your setup? You just carry laptops or notepads, or what do you use to work on the go?
Laptops. And I have a portable scanner that I use, and I use Dropbox and OneNote. I love OneNote. And I use Google Docs too. All of those different things. So I have a computer at home. I have a laptop that speaks to everything else. My phone speaks to everything. I feel like if I'm stuck somewhere for even just 15, 20 minutes, I can do something work related.
When we return, a quick lightning round. First, a quick break. This episode of How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy is brought to you by us here at MarketSmart and the Fundraising Report Card. Expand your fundraising consultancy toolkit by signing up for fundraisingreportcard.com. What is the Fundraising Report Card? Well, it's a free service offered at fundraisingreportcard.com that enhances your business with easy-to-use fundraising analytics and charts. Help your clients get proposals approved faster by using the beautiful and elegant charts created automatically in seconds by fundraisingreportcard.com. Best of all, you can use your logo in the reports and charts it generates. Learn more about the consultant version of Fundraising Report Card at www.fundraisingreportcard.com/consultants. Available as a free version or a paid version billed quarterly or annually. Once again, that's fundraisingreportcard.com/consultants. Now, back to how I built my fundraising consultancy.
Well, with that, let's get to the lightning round, just a series of quick questions and answers.
Cool. I'm excited.
What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
I had a consultant a few years ago before I started my company actually say to me, when you start your company, stop giving away your services for free. I had been doing years and years of pro bono work with nonprofits prior to doing this. And so it was hard. It's hard. So stop giving away your services for free.
What book would you recommend to those getting started?
I would recommend almost any book that teaches you how to better manage your time. One book that I really have enjoyed is called The Goal, The Process of Ongoing Improvement. It talks about the theory of constraints and how businesses should work overcoming those constraints, those obstacles that they have to.
What's your favorite personal productivity habit?
Making to-do lists. I make to-do lists every morning. It's on a piece of paper, and I like to scratch off the things that I do. So that's my favorite personal productivity habit.
What's the best under $100 purchase you made in the last month or so?
The massage that I got on Tuesday, I feel like the stress of what we do, whether you're a consultant or whether you're working in a nonprofit, can be really stressful, and we internalize a lot of that stress. And so I think taking care of yourself and getting massages and doing whatever you need to do to relieve stress is a good investment.
Yeah. What's your favorite monthly subscription or service you're signed up for?
So don't laugh because it's all work related, but Plan Giving Today is my favorite publication. And then I also love Harvard Business Review. I got addicted to it when I was in business school.
What's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
A few people know this, but most do not. And that is that one of my very first jobs was working as an NBC mascot. I dressed up in this amazing, hideous, in today's standards, mascot outfit that had a peacock plume. I was a peacock. And yellow tights, yellow feet, blue body, and a big, huge peacock plume that I could pull up and make it go up. I would go to arts in the park, rodeos, represent NBC and shopping malls, things like that. It was fun.
Desk or car, what would you clean first?
Okay, so the answer is desk, but I should probably be cleaning my car.
Tea or coffee?
Both, often and early. I drink black coffee, and I love Earl Grey tea with honey and milk.
What do clients never ask you that you wish they did?
I wish they would ask me, will you help me set up an endowment? So many organizations don't have true endowments. They may have funds and they may have quasi-endowments, but I'm in love with endowments for nonprofit organizations. So that's the one question that I wish they asked.
What's the most common error you see nonprofits make?
Hiring the wrong people. I'm constantly amazed at the turnover and the commitment that many times both the organization and the employee have with each other. You know, I see the wrong fit all the time. That person leaves or the organization asks that person to leave. So I really think that organizations need to hire based on experience, passion for that particular mission, and folks that are really donor-centered.
And what charities do you admire or support?
My husband and I support a lot of organizations, and we tend to support a lot of faith-based organizations that help at-risk youth, things like that. And then we also volunteer at a cancer camp. So we do some stuff with pediatric oncology organizations. The cancer camp is for children with cancer.
And where can people find more information about your services?
They can find more information about my services at www.ThinkGiving.com. I'd be happy to visit with anybody who calls me, texts me, or emails me.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Cathy, for your time today. It was great chatting with you.
Good. Thank you. I had fun. It was great. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks for listening to this episode of How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy, presented by MarketSmart. If you like the show, make sure to review it in Apple Podcasts and pass it along to a colleague. If you're curious about what we do, go to imarketsmart.com and don't forget to check out the consultant's version of Fundraising Report Card found at www.fundraisingreportcard.com/consultants. Thanks for listening.